G'day, and welcome to another episode of Waranta, Kani, Mapali. Thomas.
We've named it. Waranta, kani, mapali virtually just means we talk a lot, which is true.
Yeah, online, in person, and hopefully here. Now, today's episode, we're going to talk about art and stolen art.
True. Looking at the, I guess we consider it blatant fraud, really. But there's a lot of avenues to look at. So we'll probably be brief on most of them, but yeah, there's a lot to talk about. I guess one of the big things for us, especially coming from Tasmania, where art's sort of seen in a different manner, because we didn't, do a lot of the stuff that others do now and done in the past. The dot painting. Dot painting's become a huge issue, especially down here. Yeah, we've had incidents in the last couple of years with people coming out of the woodwork. They always say, "Oh, we're not saying it's Aboriginal art. We're saying we're Aboriginal people doing Aboriginal art." But they always have to say, "This is my art, and I have Aboriginal heritage to promote it." So, what is it then?
Yeah, and well, the other thing is often one particular person we're talking about here, who shall remain unnamed, is doing dot painting. Now, dot painting is only endemic to Central Australia, nowhere else. Absolutely nowhere else. And to do that, just cultural appropriation for a start. And secondly, she's doing something she has no idea about of what she's even painting. She could be painting curses for all she knows. And it's just wrong. And it's as bad as having art coming in from overseas, from Bali and stuff, being sold in souvenir shops as Aboriginal art. And it's not. It is at best Aboriginal inspired art, at the very best, but it's not even that. It's a rip-off. It's taking money away from Aboriginal artists. Now, my daughter's an artist, and she paints in a wide variety of styles. And you could class it all as Aboriginal art because she's an Aboriginal artist. But she does art which is specifically cookie lungy art, and art she's been taught by her aunties and things like that, and people like that. And she does other Aboriginal inspired art, which is her interpretation of traditional designs. Then she does other things like crafts, weaving, and weaves baby baskets and all sorts of things, and works at the Torch in Melbourne. It's which is a fantastic organisation, as you know. Sells Aboriginal art that is produced by prisoners in the Victorian prison system, and all proceeds go 100% back to the artist. So it gives the prisoners something to do in prison and an economic base to come out on, and a possible career. A lot of these people have never picked up a brush before until Tasha and a few other people go into the prisons and start teaching. And they find it, hey, I've got a natural talent. And then these people are coming out, they're trying to sell their art and finding out that, well, hang on, no, there's a lot of other people who are basically ripping us off by claiming Aboriginal art, and it's not. And Aboriginal art is any art that's produced by Aboriginal people, whether it's a fashion, or whether it's painting, or whether it's sculpture, or whether it's weaving, or whether it's making traditional Aboriginal crafts, whether it's boomerangs or clapsticks or didgeridoos and things like that. But so often we're finding that they're being mass produced in backyards in Brisbane and various other places by people who are claiming to be Aboriginal artists, and they're not. And it's taking away a huge economic base from our community. We need to have something like the Australian Made campaign that used to be around with the kangaroo on in the triangle. For Aboriginal art that just specifically says this is authentic Aboriginal art. There are stickers around that says, yes, this is authentic, but we need a nationally recognised one, possibly done by the government, that is actually licensed, and for artists to actually apply for and get certain amounts that they can use on their art, place on their art, and then record it in a national register. And anything that's found to be fraudulent, we just have to start charging people with stealing our culture and stealing our practices.
That's the big one. They go through and they make policies, but they don't follow through on them. It's the same with damaging of artifacts and sites. They don't follow through. They allow companies to either try to buy the community off so that they don't take them to court, or they don't even give them the option of that. Look what's happened up in WA in the last couple of years. Look what's happened down in Tasmania here in the last couple of years. The hand stencils at the Metabanks, stuff like that. It goes on and on. The mass production issue is probably one of the big ones. You're okay?
Yeah, currently the one in West Australia with the Burrup Peninsula, they go and play one section of the community off against the other. The mining companies literally pay a section of the community to say, hey, if you say this, we'll give you all this money. We'll give you houses, cars, whatever.
You got the government doing it as well. Look at the issue with the Noongar community with the highway and getting that portion of land, and you've got one half against the other. A lot of older people, which surprised me a little bit. And this is coming from the community telling me over there, the people I know, some of them, well-known people over there would say, our elders were paid off. They end up with a new car. Some of them got a house even, which is great. But then the future is done. There's a lot of land that was literally just given over, and it's made a lot of people angry. But I guess back to the art side of things, you were talking about the mass production side of it, and not following through on things like policy. And they make claims that we'll prosecute these people, and you face prosecution, but do you? Because it never follows through properly. Birribee or Birribee Art was the big one. Obviously, the guy that runs that, it's mainly a guy, I think it's a couple that ran it, were given a so-called fine of like 2.3 million, but I don't know if they ever paid that off. And the other thing was, at the same time that they had that, they had a clothing line associated with them that Harold Thomas was literally leasing use of the Aboriginal flag to them. So regardless of that $2.3 million fine for using, they did use other people's art. They would commission it and then have somebody in Indonesia literally copy it in mass production. And yourself, if you go to a legitimate Aboriginal artist, no two pieces look the same, no matter how good they are in their mind about painting or quality or whatever. And sometimes it's done deliberately anyway.
Well, often it's done deliberately because the artist doesn't want to reproduce the same thing ad nauseum. And
exactly,
each time there's going to be variations on the story. And often it's the different little variations of the stories that is being painted and literally preserved. Because for all the legends there are throughout the Aboriginal community, a lot of them are the same across different nations, but there are different variations even within that particular nations of that legend, whether it's a name or an act or a setting even. And of course, there are going to be variations in the art as well about those legends. So there's never going to be an absolute reproduction of the legend by one artist, and it's going to be done almost the same by another artist, because it's impossible. It's interpretation. It's the way we all see things. It's perception.
Very true.
So, and that's what artists are all about. They're all about perception and how they see things.
In regards to you were saying about having I guess the government or a body, I guess, acknowledge the art issue, and whether or not we'd have a company that would be able to, or an organization or whatever, that would be able to legitimately point out whether or not art is authentic or not. I remember with Birribee, there was an issue where they were putting stickers over the top of what was coming through. So obviously when an item comes through customs, it has to say where it came from. So if it's come from Indonesia, it has to state that it's come from Indonesia or wherever else. And then they were putting an Australian-made sticker over the top, which is
or
absolute bullshit.
Yeah, I think they were actually on some of the clothing lines were stitching other labels over the top of them. So they end up with two labels. And I say, oh, yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, we're just adding this label in there, which makes it a product of Australia because something was added to it. So trying to get around the law like that, which it makes it very grey sort of an argument that part of it was produced here in Australia, maybe a label was stitched on, that was it. Nothing else.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it? It's really, really ridiculous. I guess that there's...
You're right. Buying a brand new car and changing one tire and claiming you built the car.
Or changing the logo on the front.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's I guess the whole issue is huge, but the big one for us, and as we were stating earlier, is people that come forward saying that they're Aboriginal artists, they do what they interpret as Aboriginal art, and then flaunt that they're supposedly Aboriginal people to sell it. It's never, oh, I just did this art, it's in their own house, it's not going anywhere. I don't think anyone would probably even care about that. That wouldn't be an issue. But the issue becomes, in the back of my head, if I walked into someone's house, I'm going to go, oh, where are you from? But in general, it's not an issue. When you've got somebody trying to sell art, especially online, now with how easy it is to do things on marketplaces, on Facebook, set up your own website, and join larger organizations, for that matter, that go on to sell art for you and often commission huge amounts, it gets ridiculous. We were saying about the dot painting. I've had aunties from Victoria, outside of the city sort of areas. So I'm trying to think of their mob, but they contacted me. There was a guy that had claimed that he came from the people from the Tarkine. And I went, well, that's very interesting because there isn't any. I said, they're the people that were there. There's very little information on them because they either moved on and then got killed once they moved on, or they got killed in the area. I said, there's very little information. Robinson's got some information. I said, nothing's been passed down because none of our mob come from there. I said, that is a lie. And I looked into this guy. One of our mob over in Victoria there, Sean Thomas, the boxer, he first got it sent to him. And he works for VACA. So stuff like this will come forward to him a lot. People either trying to get help looking for their kids, if their kids have been taken off them, or if they're trying to prevent that from happening, they'll go to VACA and they'll bring stuff like that forward. And he obviously has to ask, who are you? Where do you come from? More often than not, organizations will be asked. Well, this guy had been passed on to Sean, not for that reason, but more just to see if he was legitimate, because he was getting awards. Yeah. And I know we don't mention names, so I'm not going to, but it was ridiculous. And when I say awards, I mean getting awards and money to paint, and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. And it pissed off some aunties in Victoria that finally came forward. We didn't know that there was other people mad. We thought it was just us acting like, the barking dogs at the gate, because we couldn't get in. We didn't know I didn't even know where he was. He was all over the place as far as I could see. And these organizations were using him and protecting him. And it just got ridiculous. We've tried to come forward with ideas to do something about it. But the big thing with him was the blatant lie that he had one of those, I guess, proof of Aboriginality letters from his elder, who he never named. He's never named his elder, claiming that he was from this mob from the Tarkine. And he was also doing art that included Flinders Island. So he was getting pictures of places on Flinders Island, places that, most people know of, like Killicranky or White Mark or Lady Baron, and just adding things like dots, for one, just, attacking the drawing or whatever it is that he's done with dots to try and legitimize it in his mind, and then giving these places names and not knowing anything about it, knowing nothing of the area, just assuming whatever of these places. And it just, it cracked me up. But the person I should have wrote his name down. I haven't. It was the guy over in the Eastern Shore that tried to give Dusty Martin's father the sign off. That's who it was for sure. We looked it up. We managed to find out. Well, he's passed now. He's gone. He died. His family shut down the organization. So this guy is still living off of that.
It's the closest he'd ever been to being a blackfellow was he might have done time with. That was the only thing he ever did with the Aboriginal community was he did time with the couple. That was it. It's like now I've seen this claim so many times in the past few years, and it makes me laugh every time. People in Victoria who are claiming to be descendants of Truganini. Oh yes, Truganini was over here in Victoria in the 1800s. Yes, she was. Truganini could never have children, and from a very early age, she didn't have any children. How can they be descendants? Oh, but you know, but keep backing up the tree, buddy.
That's it. It's documented. She had, unfortunately, due to what happened to her, she had long-term syphilis, and she probably had other issues too. But it was that prevented her from being able to get pregnant.
Exactly. Now it goes back to that thing of people are claiming to be Tasmanian Aboriginal and stuff like that, and they're not. And we need to really crack down on that because of the situation here in the state with self-identification makes it almost impossible at the moment. So that has to be changed. But for people to sell Aboriginal art, the first thing that must exist is they must be Aboriginal. Otherwise, it's not Aboriginal art. And it doesn't matter what style they're doing, whether it's sculpture. Now, I don't know if sculpture ever been an art form in traditional societies. I assume it probably was with clay and stuff down the mud on the riverbanks, but not a major art form. But it doesn't mean an Aboriginal person doing sculpture now is not interpreting Aboriginal legends and stuff in sculpture. Art is like that. It's three-dimensional. It's four-dimensional almost, in that it moves through time. So, yeah, the first thing you have to understand is Aboriginal art is not going to be just dot paintings. It's not going to be X-ray paintings. It's we're not going to be down here carving rocks and stuff like that and selling slabs of rocks for you to hang up on your wall because we didn't do any other type of painting. Apart from handstands, carving sides out of cliffs, sell them off. No, it's not going to be done. Shell necklaces and stuff like that. Yes, we did do that, but anybody who's claiming to do traditional Aboriginal art and they're trying to sell you a painting from here in Tasmania is blowing wind up you behind anyway, because it wasn't done that way. Any art like that is modern Aboriginal art nowadays. If it's a painting on canvas from Tasmania, from a Tasmanian Aboriginal artist, it is their interpretation of legends. And that's fine. It still makes it Aboriginal art. It is not a traditional form, but is still Aboriginal art. And as such, it needs to be protected from people selling fake Aboriginal art. It's the same with the rest of the artists. They want to have, any section of the community want to have their art protected. They don't want to be ripped off. They don't want somebody in Indonesia or something like that getting a copy of their painting, reproducing thousands of copies of it and selling it off and taking all the profits. That's not the way it should work. It's intellectual property.
I had a friend, so you're aware too, we've got 10 minutes left. I had a friend that was on tour. He does some interesting street art, I guess you'd say. So not art as in painting and stuff. He does like dance and some weird circus sort of stuff. His name's Samora. And he went to Indonesia and he sent me a video. He goes, "Oh, you wouldn't believe it, man. I found some traditional Aboriginal boomerangs." And I'm like, "What's he mean?" And he's saying this in front of somebody who's Indonesian. And he goes, "In fucking Indonesia." And I'm like, holy shit. It was mass produced for a whole street.
Yeah.
There's hundreds.
Sections of the community that are just dedicated to producing fake art. And there'll be sections that just produce didgeridoos or boomerangs, and they paint the same design on the boomerangs time after time after time. It's almost could be done by a computer program, but it's not as done by people. But they're paid very little, and somebody is making massive profits because it all has to be sold. So where's it being sold? Here in Australia, where the market is to tourists from overseas. They think they're buying a traditional Aboriginal art. They're not. They're buying an imitation art that's being produced overseas.
Yep, it's true. And there has been talk of trying to, you know, come together and figure something out. Obviously, other states have sort of pushed for it too. Victoria's trying now with their whatever it is over there that they've got going on at the moment with their treaty talks, having an extra chamber or whatever else they're going to try to do, whether or not it happens, whether or not it changes anything. But there was talk down here. Unfortunately, it was mostly just the Aboriginal Centre, really, talking about trying to come together and work out a policy amongst ourselves that would say, right, this is a format you should follow. A lot of it was more dance related, but there's a lot of turmoil there because a lot of these groups are our definite people and they're just arguing amongst themselves, and it becomes quite a fiasco there. But then, as we mentioned before, you've got people up the Northwest Coast that are coming out that have been taught the slightest thing or not taught at all, that have seen and watched NITV too many times and started doing their own interpretations of things, like covering themselves in white ochre the whole time that they dance for no reason other, no funeral, no nothing. Just that's what they do. They don't understand about who should be getting the ochre. They don't understand about how it should be used, how it's put on themselves, any of that, none of it. They just go out and they do that. We've seen the photos. We've seen the outrage from the community. We've heard it ourselves. And yeah, it is a big issue as well. And I think that's a part of this as well. With the necklace making, there's some people that are now just making so many that soon it's, and elders are talking about this on Flinders Island. I've heard this from them themselves. I won't name them. Most people will know who they are. They've said themselves, there's that much happening now. It's going to get to a point where there's going to be next to no shells because of global warming. The snails are going deeper into the water, and sometimes you won't find next to any, and you'll get other places where they're all going to, and people are just going through and just milking the entire area to the point where they won't come back. They can't reproduce, so there's not going to be any. And that's another big issue with this, because we didn't make necklaces like that. You got your necklaces, and more than likely you were to look after them, and that was going to be your necklaces. There's never been anything mentioned about people having hundreds and hundreds of these things. At most, I think I've seen Fanny Cochran Smith with maybe 3 or 4. She had some big ones, but there was 3 or 4 at max. Most people had 1 or 2 that I ever seen. I've never seen anything that states they had more than that.
Well, those ones that Fanny had too, how many of those were actually hers, and how many of those were ones that had been handed down from their previous family members?
Exactly.
As far as I know, everybody got one, and it was, once you've received it, it was your responsibility to keep it restrung, and which would have to happen periodically.
Yep.
So then maybe possibly if you were in the right area, you could add to it, but you would never ever, drop shells off. They would protect the amount of shells. Each particular one had a particular amount of shells. Each one was individual.
Yep. And it's one of those big things. It's been brought up more often now, especially with museums and whatnot, and organizations wanting more of this done. So it is becoming a little bit of an issue, but that's not one for us. That's one where we might have to get one of our female community to come on and have a chat, because it's a huge issue.
Possibly Zoe would be the best person.
Yeah, definitely. Zoe, Teresa. I could even see what Auntie Vicky Green's doing. She'd be more than happy to jump on. Auntie Lola, even just, I don't know, someone that can have a conversation about it, that has the knowledge and has the right to really talk on it. We've only spoke on it briefly because, as I view it, it's not really our right to talk about that aspect, but it is our right to tell people not to overtake things, in my opinion, because it just seems to happen so often now. It's ridiculous.
And stay away from the shell necklaces that have been dyed a completely different color.
Oh, that's ridiculous. I've seen some shells being sold on eBay in Victoria, and I'm like, I've never seen that color shell in my life.
No.
You know, and I've walked along Sawyers Bay and some of the bigger beaches on Flinders Island. You see the shells, they're there, they wash up. You see the colors, they don't match. The only ones I've ever seen are blue and green. I've never seen these others.
Definitely don't see purples.
No.
Not white purples anyway.
No, and you know, I'm sure if they put them in certain acids, they might be able to get a certain color, but it's so ridiculous. It's just it's overkill. But yeah, I don't know where we went with this one. We sort of got a bit sidetracked, which is good because that's what we said we were going to do.
Talk a lot, mate. We talk a lot.
We do. All right. I guess I can mention that we're going to have a YouTube channel. I've set that up. I'll start passing that information around to Rob and other people once I get a chance. I'll put the first two talks up. And once I have a look at this one, I'll put this one up as well. We've made a Facebook page. I've got to set Rob up on that one, and then we'll start sharing that around. And hopefully we'll be able to find other ways to promote it other than just Twitter, which has helped. It has definitely helped. People have obviously watched it. It's been a bit hard having it on Dropbox. I need to probably keep some of my words to myself so I don't get banned again.
Yep, that's one of the problems. And I sort of going to be reposting this on Facebook later, so you're still banned or not?
It's very true, but at least if I've got you running the page as well, you can do that. And there's always a way. I can find ways around things. I ran my radio show in between this. I had to make about 5,000 fake Facebook accounts, but they're all gone now. I had to make one every week for the last 5 to be able to post about my radio show because it would not let me do anything. And once I'd posted once, it would ban me again because it recorded my IP address. So it's crazy stuff. But yeah, I guess we'll have to get together soon and do another one. We've got to think about the next topic. You got any ideas?
Something will come up between now and then, I reckon, in the news that we might need to talk about anyway. Seems to be a fair bit happening at the moment, so why not?
Very true. All right. Woolika, we'll talk again soon.
Woolika, Thomas.